people are looking to you to provide leadership, and panic isn't good leadership. I still remember the images. I still remember the heat, and those families' stories stay with you. And you have Donald Trump responding the way he does. And let's be frank, if the mayor of London wasn't, somebody of my background, my faith, he wouldn't have responded the way he did, would he?
What's been your hardest day as London mayor?
There's been a few. I think Grenfell Tower, I still remember the images. I still remember the heat. I went to a lot of funerals. That summer was hard. I'm still in touch with the families. I see them often, and whenever I see them, it comes back. But Grenfell was just, and it still sticks with me because it could have been us. It's a council estate, diverse estate, lovely community. Those families will never be the same again. And every time I go there, and I spend time with the families, you just think of what these families are going through. One family, 6 people wiped out. Another 11-year-old child who'd won an essay competition. And when you speak to those who were the judges, she would have gone on to being, this amazing woman, lost her life in that fire. And so that 2017 was hard because we also had at the same time the awful fire at Grenfell and a number of terror attacks in London, London Bridge, Westminster Bridge, Finsbury Park. That summer was hard, because I spent a lot of time. I like to. I think it's important for me to spend time with bereaved families. So when I was an MP, when I was a lawyer, I spent a lot of time with bereaved families, my clients. When I was an MP, there was ever a homicide in Tooting, I would meet the families, ask to meet the families. When I became mayor, I started a practice where whenever there was a homicide in London, my office would write to the family and say, look, obviously give them my condolences, but give them my details and meet with the families. And so after Grenfell, I went to a lot of funerals, a lot of families, and those families' stories stay with you. And I'm still in contact with a lot of them.
That summer, June 2017, you referenced the London Bridge attacks as well, where I think 3 men in a van mounted the sidewalk, then jumped out with knives and killed, I think, 8 people in total in Borough Market. When you see this happening, you're at home, right? 10 p.m. at night, you're watching the telly, you see this happening. What goes on in your head?
So just to reassure people watching, so we do a lot of preparation, a lot of practice, a lot of planning on those sorts of things. So you try and you're never ready for it, but you try to do what you can in advance to understand it. Because I'm not a police officer, I'm not an MI5, I'm not counter-terror, but I'm the police and crime commissioner, so I need to understand what you're doing, so I can understand your job. And so I've always tried to understand what you're doing so I can be a help, not hindrance. And so when it happens, there's a lot of uncertainty in real time what's going on. But the good news is our police and other partners are trained for the phrase is a marauding terrorist. There's a phrase for it. There's training for it, and we learn from other countries when this happens. So the first time this sort of terror tactic was used, that's well known about, was in Delhi a number of years ago. So our police have learned what's happened there, and so we practice a lot of this stuff in relation to what the firearms team will do in the situation, what the police response will do, what my role is going to be, where I should be, and so forth. And also, you've got to give assurance to Londoners. You can't play into the terrorists' hands. Look, what does a terrorist want you to do? A terrorist wants to terrorize you and have panic spreading, changing behavior in a way that's perverse and so forth. So it's really important, the response I have to a terror attack, because I could inadvertently be playing into the hands of the terrorists.
Where does emotion come into all of this? You're seeing, carnage, you're seeing death. Is there a place for emotion in all of that?
In real time, there really can't be. In real time, there can't be. And that sort of stuff. There can be when it comes to a fire in Grenfell, which is a different sort of thing. But because people are looking to you to provide leadership, and panic isn't good leadership. And so one of the reasons why, I've asked for, and we've had the practice, the preparation, the planning, is to make sure there isn't panic and there isn't emotion, because you've got to make rational decisions and provide reassurance in a cool, calm way. You can't go to a Cobra meeting and be hysterical. You've got to be explaining the facts, what you've ascertained, what you're going to do, what buses are going to be diverted, what tubes are going to be stopped, and so forth. And the other important thing in London, in that sort of context, Stephen, is what we can't afford to happen is reprisals, right? People wrongly thinking every Muslim's a terrorist. We saw in America, post 9/11, somebody wearing a turban attacked and killed because people thought wrongly that it was involved in terrorism in 9/11. So there's that part of reassuring the community tensions as well.
After that incident happened, Donald Trump came out and made some disparaging comments about you in London, really kind of mocking what you'd said. How do you feel about that? From my point of view, it's incredibly bizarre behavior for a world leader to be taking such a stance after such a tragedy. But how did that feel on that day, emotionally?
It was odd. Let me see why it's odd. There's basically an understanding we have. Look, there are certain cities and certain parts of the world are targets of terrorists because of our values, because of our way of life, and so forth. And so there's a sense of solidarity. We saw what happened in Paris. We saw what happened in 9/11, right? There are other examples around the world, in Manchester, the awful, events of the Ariana Grande concert and so forth. And so there's always a sense of solidarity, and you'll see world leaders, mayors and others, sending a message of solidarity. And it's unusual, it's exceptional actually, for particularly our closest ally, right? Special relationship. You saw our Prime Minister's response to 9/11, Tony Blair, George Bush. And you have Donald Trump responding the way he does. And let's be frank, if the Mayor of London wasn't, somebody of, my background, my faith, and so forth, and he didn't have the views he had about people of my faith and my background, he wouldn't have responded the way he did, would he?
Has that played a role in how people have treated you in terms of, on the other side of the aisle, people that have political views? Do you think I'm reflecting now on much of what Meghan Markle said about how how claims about institutional racism impacting the way she was treated by the press and by the institution itself. But when I think about you being, probably Britain's most famous Muslim, you are the Mayor of London. Do you believe that there has been instances, and there are just generally a bias because you are a Muslim yourself? And how does that rear its head on like a day-to-day, month-to-month basis?
Well, looking backwards, I'm sure you've read about my first election campaign in 2016, right? My faith was used against me by my opponents. You can't have a Muslim over mayor, links with terrorism, so forth, for no other reason but because of, let's be frank, my faith, right? And that's why it's so important to win. Because had I not won, if you're an Asian or a Muslim or whatever, you're thinking, hold on a sec, it's not possible to be the Mayor of London because of your faith. It holds you back. And that's why winning was important for a variety of other reasons as well. But the thing about our city is, notwithstanding the prejudices against the religion that I practice, because a minority of terrorists do bad things using the name of Islam, this city voted for not just an ethnic minority, not just a religious minority, but the religion he belongs to is Islam. It's just something wonderful about our city, not just tolerating difference, respecting, embracing and celebrating it as well. But I can't escape the fact that, being a Muslim, when we're living in a climate of Islamophobia, has challenges as well. It's not a secret, so I'm not divulging any breaches of, national security. The Christchurch shooter in New Zealand, referenced me in his diatribe. The Finsbury Park terrorist, referenced me in his terrorist attack in Finsbury Park outside the mosque. I'm not giving equivalence to Donald Trump in relation to terrorists, but Donald Trump, for a period of time, was obsessed with me, and so that leads to, you go to social media, some of the stuff that I get on social media, right? You go to some of the far right groups, some of the stuff I receive there. Some of the, inverted commas, mainstream journalists who use me as clickbait, they know if they use my name, it's going to attract traffic to their social media channels. They know that. And
because you're Muslim.
But of course it is, right? Because we know that there's a currency. There's a currency, right? And we know for reasons that aren't fair to Muslims, the vast majority who live in the West love the West, law-abiding and so forth. But the actions of a small minority means we're all demonized.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.